Hi, true crime fans. It's me, Patty Lee, here at the True Crime Grapevine, and I said I was going to go live, so I'm going live, and hopefully you can hear me. See the little microphones over here. My setup outside changed a little bit, and I'm not sure. Let me see if I can make it work better. Okay, I'm gonna do some tilting action. So hopefully, wouldn't it be hilarious if my computer just fell right off the table? Hopefully you can hear me. Can you hear me now? All right. I don't even think anybody watches these lives, but if you are watching, hi. The True Crime Grapevine is just something I started since I was an educational psychologist teacher who watched all the YouTube. I swear I watched everything having to do with true crime for hours, and I was telling everybody about it. And then I decided, hey, well, actually, my sister said you should do like a true crime grapevine because all you're doing is talking about this stuff. So thank you, sister. Anyways, and then I decided, since it's the grapevine, maybe if I needed a shtick, I should drink. And I'm not really a drinker. So that's kind of fun. So I'm gonna see if I can tilt this just a little bit. Okay, so I'm having some Bellini. Why Bellini? Well, it's fabulous. I don't know if we'd say we're celebrating because it's kind of sad. I mean, the whole thing is horrible. It's sad that Paul and Maggie died. It's sad that it seems to be his dad, her husband. That's who got indicted today. So it's sad. I don't know why I'm drinking this, except so if you don't know what a Bellini is, it's champagne and peach juice. It's like a mimosa, but instead of oranges, Florida, we're moving up. One would think Georgia. No. I've been told by my friends in South Cackalack, and my relatives who live there, that actually South Carolina produces more peaches. So that's why we're having this. All right, ready? And by the way, here's my fabulous bucket. I wouldn't say I'm a devotee of. I'm like the cheap version of Martha Stewart, which I was going to say is like trying to think of that brown girl. I'm even like further down. So this was an ice cream bucket that I kept my shells from all the South Carolina beaches I've been to, like Litchfield and Murrells Inlet and Folly Beach. Anyways, now I just put some ice packs in it. So it is my de facto ice bucket. I need one of those. And we're drinking out of a mason jar because we're talking about being down in South Cackalack. We're going to keep it casual. It's a porch party. Ready? Woo! Okay. I don't know if you can tell. Fabulous. All right. So let's pour out a glass for remembering Maggie and Paul. Maggie almost made it out. We all know that in any domestic violence situations, divorce situations, when you're trying to leave, that's the most dangerous time of all, and that seems true. So to Maggie and Paul, in your memory, what did they say? May your memory be a blessing to those who know you, except to Alec, maybe. And we're going to talk about the maybe. There's some interesting twists. Okay. To Maggie and Paul. I don't think you're supposed to gulp it. If you've been following the True Crime Grapevine, you might know that we lost our AC. We're in the process of getting a new one. It's going to be another week. And it hasn't that hot here. I'm right near the Michigan-Ohio border. It's hot, though. And I'm not even a sweater, and it's hot. A person who sweats. I sound like I said it was a sweater. That's dumb. Okay, so it's hot. This is cold, and it's great. Okay, so one preemptive thing I'd like to say. So I've been on the Twitters. I do like argumentation. That's one of the reasons I did a PhD program. But when you do any sort of advanced whatever, and I'm not saying I was great at it because I'm only ABD, which means I did all my coursework and finished, but I did not finish my dissertation. Again, dyslexic detective. Not that dyslexia should hold you back, but personally, I didn't find out until it was too late, and I didn't do all the accommodations I should have. But irregardless of all that, or I should just say regardless, because irregardless is a double negative, basically. one of the big things that I studied personally was a part of a philosophy called epistemology, what it means to know. And a lot of that is talking about possibilities and entertaining them, ones that have logic and reason behind them and evidence. So it's not just like, what crazy thing can you think of? It's being, I think I'm more of, I'm not a relativist. I'm not an absolutist. I'm trying to be an evaluativist, meaning I'm trying to be more pragmatic about, maybe I can't tell you exactly what the truth is with capital T, but we can talk about what probably is true based on the evidence. So the little t, the truth that we can agree on based on, and I call it AFOC as far as we know. And then I say AFOC RN as far as we know right now. Okay, so I think I'm hitting this slightly. So our world seems like I'm in California and we're having a shaky tremor, but that's just me outside on the porch in my, I don't know, a lot of people have these swingy, bouncy chairs. They are fabulous. It's like being a baby swing, but a grown-up version of that. Again, getting off topic. So we are here talking about the Murdaugh murder indictment. Now, if you're interested in the Murdaugh case, which I will recap in a quick second here, Mandy Matney is the person you need to follow. A lot of other people have done a lot of good updates, but Mandy Matney, that's kind of hard for the dyslexic detective to say because there's a lot of M's involved there, but she can be found on YouTube, podcast. She works for Fit News, but I believe she's also an independent. She's doing an independent sort of investigation, as well as reporting for Fitz News. She, I believe, is writing a book about the Murdaugh case, and it's spelled like Murdaugh, but if you're from the Low Country, it's Murdaugh, and it's Alec. It's kind of, you sort of drop everything. I don't know. Watch the Wired guy on the linguist on Wired to talk about different American ways of pronouncing things, but it's common in the South. So it's Alec Murdaugh. And even though it looks like Alex Murdaugh, and Mandy has been following this case before anybody else. She did a podcast that's been going for over 2 years, I believe now, and go watch it. Before any of these trials start, you need to back up and listening to her. Because as I was saying before about philosophy, Mandy covers all what we know, and as far as we know right now, and when they learned more, she would include that, but she always would make sure she would say, she would qualify it. Like, this is what we know thus far, and this might be true, and there's some evidence that might suggest it's not. She would say the whole thing, which I, as somebody who likes to think of, yeah, but what about this? And what about, she would answer it before I even got into, like, I would think it, and that'd almost be the next thing she'd cover. So she's a reporter who covers all the possibilities, and it's something that I really appreciate. Now everybody has a bias, but reporters and people who are studying real life events are trying to tell you what their background is, what their bias might be, and they self-reflect as they go along, and that's what I think she does. So one of the other things I just want to say, because this is what happens on Twitter, if I or somebody proposes an alternative theory, like, yeah, but what about this? That doesn't fit. What do you think that might mean? Could that mean, like, maybe this person that everybody's on board with is guilty as sin? They're not. And it's called, it doesn't mean that the person questioning is not believing or even leaning towards what seems to be the obvious suspect, allegedly. It really is seeking to disconfirm, and seeking to disconfirm is the major thing most people leave out in any argumentation, whether it be informal, like on Twitter, or speaking with your family, or whether it be formal, like in when you're in debate or in a debate situation, like in the lawsuit. And seeking to disconfirm means you have to address the other possibilities, and then for a moment, see if you can carry out the logic of, so if that's true, then, It's a lot of if-then statements. And it might sound boring, but in practice, you would be surprised. As soon as you go, yeah, but if this, then doesn't it follow that this might be actually true? And if that is true, that throws into question what everybody was assuming is true. If you are somebody who is a critical thinker, you can take your, like, what you believe right now and hold it aside, and then try to put yourself in the mindset of that if then what, and see if you can knock it down. Like, can you take that as like the truth for a second and see, like, does that make sense? If that, then do these other things follow? Do you buy that logic? Does it match up with the evidence? If you're actually looking to seek what the truth is, and I do believe there's an observable truth, not an observable, I believe there's a truth, but the problem is we're all observing it from different points of view, different times, different perspectives, and with different amounts of information. That becomes problematic, especially we armchair detectives, dyslexic or not, highly educated or not. I mean, and just because you're highly educated doesn't mean you're a critical thinker, and it doesn't even mean that you know what you're talking about. There's plenty of people who get PhDs and are professors who aren't very critical thinkers or bright. Let's drink to that. Now, you might be asking yourself, is she just biased because she didn't finish her PhD all the way? And the answer could be maybe, but I'm sure all of you who've ever met professors can think of at least one who, like, they're book smart, like they memorize things, but when it comes to problem solving in real life situations, maybe they're not great at that. And maybe that's why they're in the ivory tower. I'm just saying. That's another bad argumentation thing. It's kind of manipulative. Well, I'm just saying, you've heard that on some mainstream media where they just bring up something that they can't prove, but that they want you to start thinking of. So anyway, as I was saying, you also have to look at your sources, and you do come to trust certain sources. Now, you should trust yourself the most. Like, you should always question every source a little bit. You should. That's critical thinking, not just blindly trusting any source or authority, right? Again, that makes people angry. What are you doing? Why are you questioning? We all think this, which is groupthink, right? Which is the in group. Everybody discussing it agrees that Alex, he's obviously the one. Okay, so if you say, yes, but what if, and people flip out, that means they might be partaking in confirmation bias and groupthink. They're in the in group. They want to believe this. This is the truth with a capital T. And then anybody who questions is threatening their truth. So you should be able to question and not threaten other people if they're critical thinkers, because they'll be like, good point. Let me answer that. Like, that's the solution to somebody questioning. You go, let's think about that. So if what you're saying is accurate, then what? All right, so that's where I'm starting from, because a couple of people got a little upset, and it wasn't about the Murdaugh case. It was about a different case, where there's like a big gap in logic for me. But of course, I'm not a detective. I don't have the evidence. Now, do I trust that the police always do the right thing? Do I? Do you? I mean, in historically, I could give you a million, not just recent cases, through history. I mean, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And the more power somebody has, the more likely they are to, like, just start doing a little bit not right. And then, oh, nothing happens. Oh, then they try it again. Like a kid who isn't at all ever stopped when they break a rule. They push the limits, right? That happens with power. Okay, so let me have another drink because it's hot out here and I'm just rambling. Anyways, just because the police say things and write it in an affidavit doesn't mean it's capital T truth. It means, as far as they know right now, that's what they think. And if you read affidavits very closely, you will sometimes see language that is not definitive because they are just getting They can get a indictment against somebody that is very pro prosecution side, because that's how the system is set up. But then when it actually goes to trial, it seems like the defense has so many safeguards. So it's kind of a balance there. But in the beginning, they can kind of throw some shade and say, like, and it's not stuff that goes in court. And we saw that with the Barry Morphew case. So with the Murdaugh case, Alex Murdaugh popped on the scene for most of us. Now, not those who live in Hampton County or even in South Carolina in the Low Country, which is like the bottom 4 or 5 states that is near the coast. South Carolina, the south of South Carolina, near the coast, like from south of, like, around Charleston all the way to Savannah is the Low Country. And some people think it goes all the way even up to like Murrells Inlet, Myrtle Beach, South Myrtle Beach, like that south is in, a little bit in is Low Country. So there's no specifically defined area, but that's about where we're talking. And Hampton County, South Carolina is in that. And Alex Murdaugh is a Silver Spoon kid. He came from a family that was the DAs, basically the prosecution, for almost 100 years. Like his daddy was, his daddy's daddy, his daddy's daddy. And we did find out they had his grandfather had some similar issues that he's having. So when the first thing that comes on the scene for the national and world stage is that Maggie and Paul are found shot at the Murdaugh's hunting property. And that's in, I believe it's Carleton County. They live in Hampton. This was in Carleton County, but it's all Low Country. And Alex knows everybody in all of this, because not only is Alex, his firm is a family firm. He not only is like held the DA position, like the prosecution, but they also did a lot of personal injury cases. And I guess even he would handle it, which is weird because it seems like if you're the prosecution criminally, I guess civilly you can still do stuff. But as you will see, we get a huge conflict of interest, and that has led to a lot of, I believe, Alex, besides the fact that he was willing to do it, has led to his problems. So Alex's wife and his son are murdered, and he was visiting his elderly parents, is what he says. He comes home around 10 o'clock. It's dark, and he goes out. It's a huge property. There's like a big house, but then there's a hunting lodge, and everybody hears June 7th, 2021 is, oh my God, there was this murder out in this property. And not everybody has money like this. So it is like a big deal that this super rich, super powerful guy's family was eliminated. And like, what in the hay? And was he supposed to be there? Like, it was just crazy, right? This doesn't happen to rich, powerful people. What's going on? Well, within even that next day or so, the police in the area, one of whom had taken a political donation from Alec, which, he gave, you know how politicians give to everybody and everybody gives to everybody. So, but they brought in the state police, which is they call it SLED, which is the South Carolina's, what does LED stand for? It's like their state FBI. So, you know how everything has a federal organization and then there's a state reflected similar entity, because the United States, and I'm sure we all know this, but I'm just going to quickly go over because when people were talking about like the Johnny Depp case and other cases, it gets confusing as why rules are different from one state to another. Well, when we became the United States, one of the big things was we're united. And if you watched Alexander Hamilton, the musical, that was the big thing of federally, it would help us to, in a foreign world, we could like borrow money, we could do things, be stronger together, united we stand. But people still wanted their own personal states to be like little entities in and of themselves. So basically the rules became like, okay, so there's these federal rules that everybody has to do. And then underneath the federal rules, if it's not a big federal rule, then states can will be allowed to do what they want, but it can't break a federal rule. But as long as it doesn't break a federal rule, they can make their own rules. And then there's this concept called home rule, which even goes smaller and smaller into county and then state, like, city or entity. So that's how you can get different rules within the same state. The same county can have, like, municipalities can be slightly different. That happened with smoking. At first it became municipalities said no, and then it became like countywide, then it was statewide, and then you might have a federal law. Sometimes it gets backed up, like we've had recently, where we have federal rules and suddenly there's a decision where the courts say, oh, it's not a federal law anymore. States, do what you want. It goes back to the states. So that's that. So the SLED is the state type of FBI that investigates within the state wrongdoing. So you call them in when there's any sort of potential for conflict. So we have SLED comes in and right away, everybody's like, the public has nothing to worry about. So that was everybody's first clue. The public has nothing to worry about. And there's a killer on the loose that just went to this random rich family's house. So everybody's like, okay, so this was targeted. If the regular people don't have to worry about, then I guess it's something specific to the Murdaughs, which, okay, rich people have rich people problems. Maybe it's some sort of weird vendetta, right? Could be. Then we didn't hear anything. And then in July, oh my God, somebody shot Alec on a road randomly. And he was airlifted. And this was the story at first. And then, oh, wait a minute. He was airlifted, but then when he got to the hospital, he walked away. What? And then at the same time, oh, he's got huge financial problems. He's been stealing from clients. Now, other channels, I have heard people say, maybe it was a mainstream media or legacy media, but the way it has been described is, oh, he's done this crazy thing. People, if you watch any true crime, you know that lawyers stealing, especially lawyers who do personal injury, stealing from their clients. Have we heard of this before? Oh, yes. The Giraldi case with Erica Jane's husband, Tom, and his company out in LA. This isn't like, oh, this guy was a political people in the backwoods and they were doing whatever they wanted because, they were not being watched. Tom Giraldi, LA firm, and was still buying, it appears allegedly, it has been alleged that he had judges in his pockets and the board of the lawyers bar in his pocket so that when complaints came through, they wouldn't go anywhere. Okay. We've also seen this with the Stormy Daniels lawyer, Avenatti, Michael Avenatti. He's in big trouble. Why? Stealing from clients, taking, getting these big, huge settlements and then pocketing and getting rid of the money. And then, like what Tom Giraldi did was just waited to a statute of limitations, which is you can only sue within a certain time period, and they would lie, time period, and then you would find out, too bad for you. Now, Michael Avenatti, big trouble, just like Tom Giraldi. So what, and there are other lawyers. There was one more, a big one recently, but so personal injury lawyers getting big settlements and stealing from their clients does not seem to be a unusual thing. So, but we find out he was doing that. And we find out he doesn't appear to have been shot. It appears as if he was shot by someone he knew, this guy named Eddie, who I do believe is like, hi, everybody, we're having guests, who is a third cousin of Murdaugh's. And then it comes out he's being arrested for some drug charges, and he admits or alleges that it was not like a murder for hire. Okay, so at first, after Maggie and Paul were killed, it seems like somebody was after the whole family, right? So even if Alec, everybody's like, oh, his thing later on was, I have a drug problem. I'm in all this trouble. It's because I have an opiate addiction. I've been stealing from my, firm. It's because I'm a druggie and I need to go to rehab. And he did go to rehab for a while. Now, one would think if we wouldn't found out he paid somebody to shoot him, one would have thought, okay, so whoever was after, I mean, everybody's like, oh, he wanted the money for his son. He would have died. He thought there was a rider on his insurance policy that said if it was suicide, his kid, his only remaining son, Buster, wouldn't get the $10 million insurance payout. Well, oh, but that rider was gone. So that's not true. Now, do we think now that could be true, right? Oh, poor him. He just wants to help his kid. Or perhaps, just stick with me. What if nobody would have found out it was an accident? It would have looked as if somebody were trying to kill him. And then, oh, I guess somebody's just trying to kill all the Murdaughs. Him too. And when it's you being targeted too, then I guess you couldn't be blamed for what happened to the rest of your family. Right? Wink, wink, nudge, nudge, nudge. So I really personally, this is just my speculation for entertainment purposes. We're just discussing this. I do not believe that Alec Murdaugh ever intended to be killed. I think it was always meant to be a graze. It was always meant to be, oh my God, I was shot. They didn't expect, that was not in the plan that people would know Eddie did it. But I think that he wanted to be just heard enough that it looked like somebody was after him, because those same people had been after Maggie and Paul, because then they wouldn't be looking too hard at him. So, but that falls apart, and then he's in trouble for insurance fraud. And what is the next thing that happens in the fall? So he did go to a Florida rehab for a while, but then he was indicted. And then the financial claims just started piling up about who he stole from. And especially this one death that occurred on his property with the nanny of many years. And he wasn't there, allegedly, just Maggie and Paul. But their 911 call is very sort of odd. Oh, look, somebody's got their base. It's all about that base. They don't sound right. Like, they don't sound like this is somebody who raised their children and she fell down the stairs because the dogs knocked her down and she can't talk and it's horrible. It doesn't sound like that to me, personally, just my opinion. Okay. Oh my God, it's so hot out here. So Murdaugh, Alex just getting it from every side. And we're finding out that he had people helping him set up fake annuities accounts. So if you've ever had a car accident or you've ever had a structured payment, you've heard about those commercials, right? I want my money now. He set up a fake company that had the name similar to a real company, only checks were also be written to him personally. I mean, it wasn't like very sophisticated fraud, because he had somebody from the bank that he was using help him. There were a judge involved. Also, similarly, in the Giraldi case, there was a judge involved. See, so this is the thing. These are lawyers who do a lot of work in the courts. They get to meet people. Oh, they have a lot of money. They do things in the community. They're buying things. They've got people they know at the bank, because they know everybody, because they're big kahunas in the world. It seems the whole financial thing seems to be similar. Now, the murder thing, that is not so similar. But I must say, unlike Tom Girardi, and as far as I know, Michael Avenatti or other lawyers that have been dipping into their clients' settlements, apparently it doesn't seem so much that Alec really was like $8 million worth of Oxycontin type of addiction, which I think would kill you. Really, it appears as if he and his third cousin, I believe it's his third cousin as far as I know right now, this Curtis Smith, the guy who was involved in his insurance fraud to shoot him, it appears as if they had like a Breaking Bad sort of situation, an Ozark situation. I don't know, one of those like drug operations, which is interesting because his name is it Eric Allen, another podcaster, or he's more of like a documentary filmmaker. Now he, I think, leaves things more relativistically. Like at the end, he goes like, "I don't know what to think." When I'm like, yeah, "Okay, but really, no, it kind of is really one thing." But he did a great episode, and I think, and of course, Mandy Manny talked about this, but Buster, Alex's grandfather, um, ran a drug operation and actually was also indicted. Now he got off, but this was back in the 50s or 60s. And I think the corruption might have been a little bit smoother back in the day, or I don't know why he didn't get like go to jail for it. But Eric Allen's podcast goes into the fact that this area in the Low Country is, and it has always been historically, even back to pirate days. It's a place where you can slip in and out very easily, sneakily, like where people don't notice you, because it's sort of intercoastal, swampy, sort of, great drug running area. Buster Senior, Alex grandfather. It really is not helpful that everybody. I wish people did the Jewish tradition, which is you don't name somebody after somebody until they're dead. These people are all named after each other, so it becomes a little confusing. But Alex grandfather Buster, because he has a son named Buster. Alex grandfather Buster, who was indicted. It was about pot, I believe. Now Alex is about OxyContin. Was there amphetamines were the other things like Ritalin or meth. So that is what was going on with Alec. But so we also find out that even though the bank, he owed his like account was in. So I don't know. He's stealing all this money. He's got this drug operation, but at the same time, he's in arrears at the bank for like $1 million or 70, maybe it was $700,000, over $500,000, but they loan him $1 million. So it's really unclear what was going on, except it seemed like he was in big money trouble. And it's a drug business cartel sort of size of a thing going on. Organized crime is what we're talking about here. So now let's look at the murder. So one of the things that recently came out was that CNN reported it. There was, now Fitz News said they didn't say it was a blood splatter. I think it was reported as blood matter, or I don't know if it was matter or a mist, or it was some indication of being close to a high velocity gun as it shot somebody. That was found on Alex's shirt. So what do we think? That seems to be unlike like what time did he get there, or people don't like his 911 call. That seems weird. Like that's forensic evidence that seems to indicate he was there. He at least was present and close to the person shot. Now, he claims he came upon the bodies after he was at his parents'. So that would be an inconsistency, and a pretty big one. We would call it a big fat lie. So why is Alex lying? Obviously, let's go with the clear assumption. Oh, he did it. He did it. He did it. Now, there's another interesting forensic fact. There were two guns. One was a high velocity rifle, but Paul seems to have been shot by a rifle that belonged to the Murdaughs that was on that property, Moselle. Now, on the Twitter twatters, people are like, look, True Crime Grapevine, obviously, the two-gun thing, it was to throw off investigators. Alec, he just did that to throw him off. And my question is, okay, but if he brought two guns to throw them off and make it look like a group, why did he choose one gun from the house? His house, his gun. That seems not smart and does not seem like throwing off the cops, because hey, your gun from this house that you arrived at with your dead family is the murder weapon that killed your son. Want to explain? Now, what could the scenario be that works with what we know? So we know there's a gun from the house. We know, oh, there's two other facts that came out a couple weeks ago. One was that Alec had called. In fact, I think we found out before 2 weeks ago. So when all the money problems came out, it was found that when the wife, Maggie, died, Alec would get all her money. But guess what? There wasn't any money. And everybody's like, wait a minute. No, Maggie was rich. Like, she was independently wealthy before she met him. She had her own property. What? No. So Alec, it looks like, was taking her stuff too. And it looks like she found out. And it looks like she went and talked to a lawyer because she wanted a divorce. That is not cool. The other fact, and it's hard to see how this all might, it could definitely work into the situation when the murders occurred. And we didn't hear anything about anything at first. You know, media, right? I mean, everybody, YouTubers, media. I'm sure people just sitting around having a drink on the back porch started talking about what happened in 2019 and Paul. Because one of the first people they looked into were people related to this incident in 2019. Paul, like his father and like his brother, was known allegedly to be a bit of a drinker and over drinker and fighter and get out of control, and like the typical spoiled rich kid who can't handle his smoke. Sorry, little 1980 something reference. But it's not his smoke, it was his liquor. Couldn't handle it. He was known just to keep drinking, not knowing where the limits were, and to get into fights and get out of control. In fact, they even had a name for him when he got this way, which was Timmy. Timmy's coming out. And we've all known people who drink. Some people just giggle more. Some people just go right from like, happy to like a puddle, crying, get all emotional. Some people get angry. And so it seems like Paul got angry. And so when he died, he was 22. So he was, not even of age to be drinking when this incident occurred. And what happened was they went out drinking. I believe it was in the Beaufort area, and they went to a cookout where adults gave them all alcohol, and they had also gotten alcohol, and they were in Alec's boat. Then they went to somebody else's house and got more alcohol after the little clam bake they had out on an island, and then they stopped on the way home for more alcohol. And then there's footage of them getting in the boat. Now, I don't know about you. I'm not even a big drinker, but I've been on a boat where people, after people party, and it's like, oh, it's safer than driving because you're on a boat. You're not supposed to drink on a boat. And you will learn why. It's dark. And this happened once we were on a boat and people were being crazy and we were driving really fast. But there can be logs, even in a deep river, there can be logs. There can be stuff you don't see until you're over on it and there's an accident. And it is scary at night on a boat, even if you're drinking. So that happened with these friends. There were 6 kids, including Paul. Paul, his girlfriend, and then these two cousins and their girlfriends. 6, I believe they were 19 years old or 20, so underage. It's just as horrific. He seems to, and I'm sure you also know people, and it tends to be the people who can't, like, that drink too much. They also don't want anybody to drive their car. I'm gonna drive it. You can't drive it. You know, gotta fight them for the keys, or let them go off by themselves. I mean, it's just frightening. That happened with the boat. It was his dad's boat. It was his boat, and he was gonna drive it. And then he was also fighting with his girlfriend, and you can imagine the scene. So while they're going down these intracoastal ways, there's a bridge. He's fighting with his girlfriend. There's a tussle. They're not even sure if he was at the wheel because he was busy fighting, and there might have been nobody at the wheel. And there was a horrific accident. They're all thrown. The boat crashes. But one young lady, Mallory Beach, she must have hit her head, and she wasn't wearing, none of them were wearing a flotation vest. Wear a flotation vest, even if it looks uncool, because if you get thrown into the water and whack your head against something, then you're going to drown because you're unconscious and you won't breathe. At least if you have a vest on, you have a chance of the vest. They're made to flip you up so that your head, so you'd be on your back and you have a better chance of being found. So nobody could find Mallory. She wasn't found for over a week. It was horrific. And of course, when they found her, she was dead. And in the meantime, though, Alex's grandfather, Alex's dad ran to the hospital. They tried to get to the kids. They tried to represent the kids because that's what the Murdaughs did. Represent the victims, especially if they had anything to do with the accident, which is unethical, conflict of interest. The staff at the hospital was saying you can't be talking, this not your kid, you got to get out of here. Oh, I represent them. See, what a great excuse, right? Oh, but I'm their lawyer. Oh, sure you are. Telling the kids, like, don't change your story, don't worry, we'll protect you. Anyways, nothing happened at first. Eventually, though, Paul did get cited, and I believe he got off, like, for the criminal stuff, or the criminal stuff wasn't going anywhere, but Mallory Beach's family was suing him civilly. So this years later, now it's like 3 years later, that trial is going on, and Paul dies right before anything really happens. So right after the murders, people are like, oh my God, it had to be somebody from, that's the first thing. And again, it's in group think bias. Everybody goes, yep, it's got to be those people, because they killed my kid, they were horrible, of course this happened. And if you know about the story, the Murdaughs were horrible, and you can't imagine somebody wanting retribution. So at first it was that, and then nobody was, SLED said, no, it has nothing to do with that. And then that's when people start going, okay, but we don't have to worry, it's got to be, okay, it's something about the Murdaughs. And then, he tries to off himself, but did he really, or was he hoping that people would believe he was shot at? Unclear, because nobody believed any of it, and it all unraveled, just like everything else was unraveling. So it is believed that when Maggie, right before she met her demise, she was divorcing him, or at least saw a divorce attorney, probably because she noticed all her shit was gone, all her money, all her holdings, and she knew who did it. Not pleased. So she's living at one of their beach houses on Edisto Island, which is between South Myrtle and I believe north of Savannah. Really nice area. I would love to live on Edisto Island. But so she's not talking to Alec. Alec lures her. So that's what we recently found out. First, we found out they were getting divorced, but then we had found out all that crap about him, and we're like, well, no kidding. And then everybody was even more convinced he killed her. But Paul was the weird thing. Why Paul? Excuse me. That's the only thing about bubbles. They make you burp. Here's to Blaney. So hot. Should not gulp. He lured, like texted Maggie and told her something to come out to the Moselle property. Now we know his dad was dying. He was with his elderly parents, but he told Maggie to meet him out there, which seems in hindsight, really, you want a divorce, but meet me at this very quiet area, this hunting lodge where we have acres of property at night where no one will hear anything. Okay, Jan, sure. Okay, so that also looks really bad. And I think it looks really bad. I mean, I am having a hard time if that is all accurate, and that's a big if, because we haven't seen, this. We haven't seen a trial. There haven't been specific filings about this. The filings about murder were only that a grand jury said he did it, and a grand jury for Maggie and for Paul. That's all. Very short and sweet. No details. Not like the Barry Morphew indictment, which was much more, what was it, 180 pages? I mean, it laid out everything. We got it all. So we have Maggie coming out there. So that makes a lot of sense. That makes it look like something was going to happen. But Paul, the last thing we found out about Paul was that he wasn't supposed to be at Moselle, that a friend had a dog who had surgery and asked Paul, hey, do you mind if I put my dog at your kennels while he's recuperating? And then asked him to go look at him. And Paul was like, sure, I'll go. Yeah, no problem. You do that. That's fine with me. I'll go check on him. So Paul was not supposed to be at Moselle. Now let's put this picture together. Don't forget, we have two guns, one from the house. That's a 2-shot rifle, which personally I think everybody should own because it's a fair fight. You see that coming. You've got 2 shots. They're at least going to scare somebody off or put a hole, but they could still live. It means business. And it's not like an automatic weapon. It's not a weapon of war. It's a weapon of, shooting your dinner and or stay off my property, right? So that one was at the house. And then there's this automatic weapon. So Paul was shot with the one from the house. Maggie was shot with the one that was the high velocity. Alec looks like he had high velocity splatter on him. So how could this have happened? Now, if you know anything about Alec Murdaugh, and maybe you don't, but there's a couple YouTubers who are from South Carolina. Hi, Gigi. Hi, Fruit Loop. And I think they know people. I mean, it's like anything else. The world's a really small place, really. We all are within 6 degrees of separation. I found out, I thought I was 2 degrees away from Alec Murdaugh, and I was 1 degree away from him because I met somebody who was literally his relative, which is crazy, instead of a friend of a friend. So, but Alec is described by those who know him. I mean, yeah, he like his son Buster and like Paul, party animal, like a hedonist, right? Rich guy, loved good food, loved good, alcohol, loved good women, just like that. I mean, like what you would expect of somebody who was brought up with everything. I do not believe he was ever described as like a wife beater or a violent drunk. So, I mean, he liked to fight men, but I mean, I don't think there were, and this is what as far as I know. So, but we do know one thing. Alec liked to hire people to do things, allegedly. I mean, allegedly he hired Curtis to be his drug guy and to, cash checks so that he could go use those checks then to do drug stuff. I mean, hired him to shoot him. Do you think it's possible that Maggie was getting too close to everything and it was all unraveling, and this trial about the beach thing where it was Alec's boat was going to start, and he called her out there to make things easier and more streamlined for his divorce? Do you think though that he hired somebody maybe that was supposed to be there? Do you think maybe Alec was standing next to the person, the hired person? Because here's the other thing I wonder about. Is it possible that neither Maggie nor Alec knew that Paul was going to be helping his friend out? What if Paul was inside the home because he had been there, or maybe he was at the kennels and because he was out in the middle of nowhere, he had the gun with him, or maybe he was inside the house and he hears a high velocity shot. What the F, right? I'm going to grab this rifle and I'm going to go out and look to see what the hell's going on at the kennels. But when he gets there, his dad's there, and some other guy's there, and then maybe his dad talks him out of the gun. Hey, son, it's not what it looks like. And he's like all freaked out. Mom, maybe he drops the gun and goes to his mother screaming. And then the other person says, we've got to take care of this, and picks up the gun, pumps a couple into him, and there you go. Maybe that's how it happened. Now, why do I say this? One, Alec's voice really does sound upset, especially when he talks about, he says, my son. That's what he sounds up. I mean, could he have hired somebody to take care of his wife while he was visiting his parents, but instead the timing was off and he came back too soon and shit was going down and Paul somehow was there, what's going on, and Paul gets involved and now he's collateral damage. That, I think, explains how the gun from inside the house got used on Paul. The fact that Paul wasn't supposed to be there, high velocity, I totally could see personally, allegedly, since Alex seems to be hiring everybody to do all his other dirty business. Why wouldn't he hire somebody to do this? Doesn't seem like he's somebody who likes to get his hands really dirty, right? And we have the aspect of organized crime. And I don't know, but it sounded like he was not a little player. I mean, he's politically involved, like very involved, very prestigious. He's got bank people involved, judge people involved, drugs are involved. I wouldn't be surprised if we find out like sex working is involved. I mean, it's organized crime, like classic organized crime stuff, right? Drugs, guns, money, women, power, corruption with political people, money laundering, drug running. I mean, that's what that is. So could it also be that there was coercion involved with getting Maggie out there, and maybe Alex was standing next to Maggie when the other people shot, and then Paul got involved and they made Paul stand next to his dad and took care of Paul too? I mean, that's what mobsters do. They don't kill you if they want you to shut up. They kill your family. Here's the thing. The easiest thing is like, oh, he did all these other crimes, ergo, he must have done this crime too. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. We don't need to worry about anything else. Goodbye, put it to bed. They all deserved it, right? But because you're a horrible person when it comes to money and power and drugs, it doesn't mean you murder your family. That's the next level step. It does mean if you're doing money laundering, drugs, you're in debt to people, powerful people. Yeah, that means your family's probably in danger and you'd probably be there. Okay, hypothetically, I don't know. I'm not the investigators. I don't have the phones. I don't have the car telematics. I don't have all the records. I'm not talking to all the people. The grand jury heard stuff, But again, the grand jury who indicted him only hears what the prosecution wants. There is no defense in a grand jury. That's why it's different from a preliminary hearing. Remember, in the Chad Daybell preliminary hearing, there were people who were witnesses on both sides, and the defense got to question the witnesses. Remember John Pryor talking to Melanie Gibb? That was a day. So when it's grand jury, we don't know. No idea. We don't know the evidence. And there was nothing written about it except they indicted him. So how is he involved? How much is he involved? Is there anybody else involved? We don't know. And so just as an armchair detective on the interwebs, I'm proposing, because this is for entertainment purposes only, and because I like to think of all the possibilities and all the potential theories, and I really don't, I always like to just go a little bit against the grain. I do. I don't know if it's the dyslexia, because there's a gift to dyslexia, which is thinking outside the box and making unusual connections. I'm just saying, can we seek to disconfirm that theory? Can we seek to disconfirm the theory that Paul was at the house and that maybe Alex had somebody wanting to kill the mom, but not Paul, and Paul got in the way? Because I feel like Paul made a horrible error in judgment, and I don't think he was a great kid, but he wasn't even fully developed. And everybody's kind of like, well, Mallory died, so Paul died, and so even Steven. And like, okay, karma-wise, but that's not really how things work, people, is it? I mean, it's not. And shouldn't we know what really happens? It seems like we want to know. I know God, I can't, sorry, it's the dyslexia. And now this. Mandy Matney wants to know. And I believe she will find out. And go watch all her stuff. This is not just like the Murdaughs and even not just about Mallory Beach. This is also about Gloria Satterfield, who was exhumed, and we don't know what they found yet, but they assumed perhaps she was unalived before her time. Like maybe that whole thing didn't work out, which then puts an interesting twist on Maggie and Paul as well, because they were the ones at home with her. And then is somebody mad about that? Because that stuff all came out, but that was after the murder. So that's, and they were cleared. But I'm just saying there's a lot. And then there's Stephen Smith, a young man from the community who was just getting his life started. It was like, I'm not even going to get into the scuttlebutt because I don't know if he had a relationship or not with one of the Murdaughs, but he didn't die by a car hitting him. And that's still being said. People are like, so he was hit by a car and they think the Murdaughs are involved. No, he wasn't hit by a car. The state police looked, the state patrol, SLED looked. There was a number of weird things about people disagreeing once the autopsy, but that has more to do, I think, with powerful people. But they didn't find like chunks of car anywhere. There was no car. Like if it was hit by a car, there'd be part of that car that hit him on the road. And he was just laid out in the middle of the road. And it looked like someone took a bat to him, was what the autopsy first said, which I think is the most likely to be real. So what did Stephen Smith know? And now that we know everything about the Murdaugh family, doesn't have to be something personal and like salacious about relationships. Could have been, did he find out something about running drugs? Was he out on the, in the intercoastals and saw something that he shouldn't have? Now there's all this other stuff that could have happened that now we have to think about. Because when you mess with like transnational or even just national organized crime doesn't like being noticed. They'd like you to pay your bills and to shut your mouth and to go along. And if you don't, you're probably going to have a problem, which is why people go along even when they don't want to. So did Gloria Satterfield see something? Interesting. Is it not? All right. So one more sip. I don't know. I don't think anybody's writing in chat. I don't even think I have a chat going. I don't even know how to do that. But please, if you are interested in this case, if you have any solutions to the problems that I proposed, if you want to work with us, seek to disconfirming those alternative theories, please put some comments down below. I would love to know what you think about what actually happened out on that Moselle property. Can't wait for this trial. I hope it's held in Columbia because that's where my relatives live. And I would like to go see that trial and tell you guys what's going on there. Wouldn't that be something? So, yes, there's a lot with the Murdaugh case. But that was my little update on the murder indictment. And please, my main squeeze sources for the Murdaugh case is mainly Mandy Matney of Fitz News. That is a local South Carolina local news organization. And Liz Farrell is another reporter there. And I forget the main guy. Sorry, main guy. But anyways, and so Mandy Matney is writing a book, I believe, based on, like, she's doing all this podcast work, and then she's going to write a book. I think her husband helps produce it. Anyways, I think I always imagine like who's going to be what, and this is what I put on Twitter. But I think Reese Witherspoon would make a great Mandy Matney, even though I think Mandy's younger than Reese is now. But come on, it's Hollywood. We can play around, and Reese looks great. But what do you think? Who should play Mandy Matney? Who should play Liz Farrell? Who should play the guy at Fitz News? Who should be? I proposed some names. I was talking to my relatives in South Cackalack about who would be. Jesse Plumpton. He's married to Claire Danes, I believe. He looks just like Alec. And then there's a Jesse Huntington who looks a lot like Paul. I don't know. Do you guys have any opinions? Put them down in the comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know who you're watching on YouTube. Who do you get your information from? There's one source that I used to really like, but it's getting to be, I will tell you, one source I do not care for, or it's not, I don't care for. I read it because it usually has like a scoop, but it's so gossipy that I don't know. And it's the UK Daily Mail online. So I sometimes screenshot and you should, like, they always, though, it's always over dramatic. It's always like, oh my God. And then later on, it, like, in the thing, it'll say like details that you're like, okay, well, that doesn't exactly mean that. And I don't like clickbait. I don't like, and I don't like bandwagons where we're going to all, burn the witch. Let's just jump on. And yeah, we all hate this person. I do not like anybody who recommends, like, let's just take a shortcut. We don't want to waste money on a jury. Extrajudicial justice is the opposite. I mean, that's like what happened on January 6th. Sorry. You can't keep a democracy if you can't keep the rules and the justice system. There's no shortcuts. Even if we know that all the evidence shows them guilty, we have to let the courts do their thing. It's frustrating, but that's what keeps us from being like a country where they just cut off hands or just hang people in the public square. So especially if you've been in the military or you're a lawyer and you're promoting, like, you know what, good, they just, like, some of this is like, oh, the cops saved us the trouble of a jury. That's cool with me. Even with, like, when we know the person did something, like with school shooters, number one, that's extrajudicial. That's letting the cops be judge, jury, and executioner. And you should be very scared of that because we know how many oopses happen. And cops have law enforcement has a horrible job. It is very tough. I don't want that job. Do you want that job? It is life or death. You don't get paid very well. And nobody appreciates you, really, because you're telling everybody the rules. Follow the rules. Nobody likes that, right? And they can be susceptible just as much as any other human to biases and any sort of influence and amplification of, things on the interwebs, just like everybody else. So but what I'm saying is, we don't advocate that here on the True Crime Grapevine, which is probably why I will never be a big channel. I'm not going to make it like, oh my God, don't you think this? And let's hate this and let's kill this. Like, no, not doing that. The justice system is horrible, but it's the best we've got. And it really does protect people. And if you've ever needed to be protected, you will understand that's important to have all those protections. Everybody thinks it sucks until they need it. And then they're like, no, but I'm innocent. Yeah. You have a right to be considered innocent until proven guilty. We all do. And I'm going to try to emulate that here, even though when people say like, I did it or blah, blah, blah. The other thing is, I want to know why people do it. If you watch that show on Netflix, Criminal Minds, not Criminal Minds, that's one where they just catch the unsubs. What was that show about the start of the behavioral unit? Not Hidden Minds, Criminal Minds, Digging in the Mines. What is it? And it's based on the real people that started that unit. Anyways, Holden is the pretend name. That's not the real first agent's name. But they went and talked to serial killers because it's that if you can understand why they do things, their motivations and the development, what led them to become this way. And I'm sorry, but everything about child development, there's, as far as I know, besides perhaps people being born without empathy, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're going to be criminals. Okay. Not having empathy doesn't give you bloodlust. Those are two separate things. Read the book by Martha Stout so you understand that. That's about sociopaths and psychopaths. And I think it's called The Sociopath Next Door, but she talks about both. Very good book. Highly recommended by the True Crime Grapevine. We want to know how people got to be the way they did, because then when there's crimes committed that are committed in a certain way, you can reverse engineer that and go, okay, well then this matches what this person is like, what we know from interviewing all these people. That's why they interviewed all of them. But if we let the cops, if we just go, oh good, I'm glad they did that, saved us, saved the taxpayers, money, you are a horrible person who, if you're an officer of the law, you took an oath not to do that. So are you just parroting that shit for, I don't know what, like, what is wrong with you? And by the way, even if somebody's a criminal, in the United States of America, the population is not the enemy. It's not like insurgents. And that's what's happened. It's like the police are afraid of regular citizens, like they're somehow in Afghanistan and there is insurgents that they have to, like, I don't want to go in there. Like what happened at Uvalde. They acted more afraid and like, well, that's not our, like the officer even said, but I got to take care of, like, I got to take care of my cops. That's my number one concern. What? You're a community servant. Protect and serve, not protect and serve your own. See, there's been like a weird twisting around, and it's very much like they feel they are in a urban war and the citizens are insurgents and they have to, and they're like military. That to me is scary AF, because I'm a citizen and I've got a mouth on me. So if I turn around and say, well, F that or whatever, and freedom of speech be damned, somebody decides to take me out because I'm a mouthy bitch, is everybody going to be like, I mean, and that happens in societies, people. Well, shouldn't have spoken up, should have known what was coming, saved everybody the trial. I mean, I'm hyperbolic, obviously. But what I'm saying is, when we talk about criminals, we don't say, well, saved us time, like with the Vicky White thing. We want to know why she did what she did so that we can prevent that from happening to other officers of the law who work with criminals. Was that criminal? Was he specifically like charming in a way? Should there have been other things in place? We don't just go, good, glad she's gone. Saved us the time. And like, you don't, that's if you were in the military and you like, I don't know, that makes me scared that the military, just being in the military a couple of years can change your brain to see regular people as the enemy and that you're separate from them, because that's the first step in seeing a person as the other. And that means you'll be okay with them being hurt. Human development wise, ethical, moral development wise, that's really, that's like what happens in fascist societies. Us against them, and them is not a person. Them is the other. We don't want that. Number one, you never know when you're going to be the them. That's freaky. And it can happen. It does happen. Anyways, okay, so that's one bad thing about drinking. And I don't have specific cases, so now I'm just blabbing on. But so we're going to seek to disconfirm, and we're not going to promote extrajudicial justice. And go ahead, like, subscribe if you want to, do the YouTubey things. Again, I'm a small channel. I'm just here just to talk. If anybody wants to talk to, that's great. Just trying to give my little, just a little nuggets of thought to just put grist in the mill. Just helping you to think a little bit more critically about what's going on, and not just trying to be clickbait and be like, oh my God, can you believe it? They're horrible people. Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of channels to get that. Again, I'm just a 50-something suburban housewife / almost PhD dyslexic armchair detective. I hope that I've informed you in a way that is reasonable, rational, respectful, and reflective. The 4 R's. If you know, you know. Anyways, I really am grateful, though, to all the YouTubers, especially those who, there's a specific one that I have to thank, which is Eric. He goes by Big E. He used to be B. Oh my gosh, dyslexia. It was like Big Eric. So it was BEBC, I believe. Anyways, if you go on Twitter, he's Docket. It's like a pink circle. And it's at Chasing Papers 89. If you go to the True Crime Grapevine, it's called Grapevine, and we're at Grapevine Crime. I retweet him, and I retweet my favorite sources. Boy, people are really getting crazy on their motorcycles, which will be my next live, talking about my favorite topic and my favorite alternative theories to seek to disconfirm, which gets everybody worked up. But until then, please enjoy a Bellini. I highly recommend my unofficial sponsors is Bellini by Saprini. I don't know. It's in this beautiful, like almost Tiffany blue bottle. It's $14.99, I believe, or $17.99. It's kind of expensive for me. I don't usually spend that much, but look at it. It's so pretty and pink. It's fabulous. Goes great with any South Carolina anything. Everything goes well with South Carolina. Anyways, see you guys when I upload next Tuesday. So yeah, I will see you next Tuesday. Bye.